Okay, hello everybody. I think we're connected. We're live. Everything seems to be in order. Okay, before we start today's session, I have a bit of sad news for the followers of this channel. Many of you will remember the little black cat Shadow, who would often jump up and sit beside me during the talks. Sadly, she died this last week. She's no longer with us. She was getting quite old, and in the end, I think it was her kidneys failed her. And she went fairly quickly and peacefully. So that's the story of Little Shadow. She will be missed. Okay, let's begin. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. So we're continuing on with Grimānanda Sutta, 10 perceptions. Remember that the theme of this, the whole discourse, is training our perception, the way we perceive things. It's sanya. Sanya is flexible, and it was educable, I would say. It can be trained, it can be changed, it can be modified. And as part of skillful practice is learning to perceive things according to Dhamma and not otherwise. And today's perception is called the perception of danger. That's adinava in Pali. And the paragraph expanding this in the sutta deals with the danger faced by the body. There's a long list of diseases that the body is prone to, and then it adds accident, illness caused by bad behavior, illness caused by misfortune, illness caused by karma. So the point here is not to induce fear or to induce hypochondria. We've all known individuals who are hypochondriac, who are terribly afraid of getting ill and convinced they're always catching every disease under the sun. And also beings who are overly afraid of germs and of contamination and so on, to a point of neurosis. Of course, it's not advocating either heedlessness or carelessness. We take due precautions to keep our health, but to take a realistic perception that this body is prone to various misfortunes and illness. It's a law of impermanence that eventually we will die. The body is subject to all kinds of illness and disrepair, which increases with age. And there's really no escaping that. And to be cognizant of that and aware of that, I think the correct perception is one of to perceive the fragility and insecurity of existence. It's the height of foolishness to falsely assume a kind of invulnerability or immortality, and uh, it's this attitude of not facing the reality of the body that then induces fear and anxiety when various illnesses threaten or manifest. And then there's a strong emotional reaction because one has not previously faced the reality of the fragile nature of the body. If I could venture into a few words of, let's say, social commentary, I think we've all seen in the last few years how people's fears around disease can be manipulated and used to further various agendas. If a person understands this body is subject to birth, sickness, old age, and death, they're less prone to be able to be manipulated by fear. So fear is actually the wrong perception here. Any action undertaken on the basis of fear is always going to be unskillful. Rather, it's a attitude, a perception of realism, that there is always multitude of dangers that can afflict a being. That there's no safety or security in samsara. Some years ago, I was in the city of Boston, Massachusetts, and me and Ajahn Amaro, and we were given a bit of a tour around the city. And Boston is a financial center. Its main industry, or one of its main industries, is insurance. And there's many big buildings put up by insurance companies. And insurance companies, of course, they sell the illusion of safety and security. And you can see it in the advertising. The idea you're in good hands with Allstate, right? I don't know if that's an old ad. Maybe people don't remember it. And we saw one of these towers that the driver told us, if you look carefully, you can see that it's leaning a little bit. They're quite concerned about this building. It was a mistake when it was built. The foundation wasn't done properly, and it's on swampy ground. And they're trying to engineer a way to keep it from falling over. And we thought that was really funny. And I remember Ajahn Amaro remarking, it's an edifice built on the illusion of safety and security, and it's falling down, it's sinking into the mud. And this is the perception we should have of this body, that it's sinking into the mud, from earth to earth. We're going to however much we care for the body or pamper it, eventually it's going to succumb. And the dangers that afflict the body are multiple. So I reiterate that this perception of danger is not a perception of fear or of hypochondria. It's a perception of realism. And it's meant to counter the false perception of safety and security that one feel, especially when a person is young, they often feel invulnerable and immortal. everyone under 40 has, I think, unless they really make an effort, they have a hard time envisioning their own death. But becomes increasingly obvious as you age, although there's some old fools can avoid looking at it for a long time. So this perception also shouldn't be a gloomy one. It should just be a realistic one. This body of mine is composed of the 4 elements. It's built up of rice and gruel. It's subject to these 80 diseases, and that's just the way it is. And I have to perceive it in that way and not perceive myself as some kind of charmed being. So it's a reflection related to the reflection on impermanence, of course, and reflection on death. But the emphasis here is on the insecurity, instability. There is no safe place in samsara. There is no escaping unless one leaves samsara altogether. The only safe, secure refuge is nibbana. There are, of course, degrees within samsara. Some positions are worse than others, but none of them are secure. None of them are without danger and falling away. And this is particularly true in the sense desire realm, in the human realm, in the animal realm. We're subject to these diseases and dissolution. In the Dewa realm, it's not so obvious. This is actually, in terms of Dhamma, this is actually an advantage of being human, because we can't fool ourselves for long. Devas can live so long, and they're really without bodily suffering until near the very end, when they get the 5 signs, and even those are quite mild relative to what humans experience. But it often comes as a total shock to them. It's said when the Buddha taught in the Dewa realm, many of the Devas were distraught and frightened because they had previously thought themselves to be immortal. It's not so easy to imagine oneself to be immortal in the human realm. Our lives are actually quite short, but people avoid looking at that. They avoid looking at their own mortality, and they avoid thinking about it. And when something comes along, an illness or an accident, it's a total shock to them. Like, how did this happen? Well, of course it happened. You're a human being in samsara. You're going to experience these things. If you have this perception of realism, then you can handle it. It's not completely overwhelming to you. And it also should rouse a sense of urgency to realize nibbana, because this is probably the most important aspect of the perception of danger, is that I perceive my position here as precarious, and my only real escape or refuge is the realization of nibbana. And my time is limited, and I don't know at all how long I've got with reasonable health or even with life. So I better make an effort now, take advantage of this human form while the opportunity exists. This is samvega, the sense of urgency. So that's the perception of danger, one of the 10 perceptions. Let's see. So if you have questions, put them in there. Oh, I see. Thank you for a lot of condolences for the passing of Shadow. She too is subject to impermanence. That's that. Is Shadow going to be reborn into seat of heaven? I find that unlikely, but who knows? It's said that only an anagami can attain Nirodha Sampati. However, is this only said in commentaries or mentioned in the suttas? Do Sarvastivada have any opinion on this? I'm not real sure if it's in the canon. I believe it's in the commentaries. It's from the commentaries. I'm reasonably certain. I haven't investigated that. I don't know what the Sarvastivada's opinion on this was. Could you walk us through the links of codependent origination in reference to something mundane like wanting to eat a slice of pizza? Okay. Well, we wouldn't necessarily start all the way back from ignorance and Sankara's consciousness, because this is setting the existence in this life. An action in this life, like wanting to eat a slice of pizza, would begin with contact. We're starting from a position of already being equipped with the human body and with 6 sense bases. That's the first several stages of dependent origination. And then at the stage of contact, we contact a sensation, and it can be an internal sensation. We can contact a feeling of hunger. This is a bodily sensation. And the bodily sensation causes feeling. And the feeling is unpleasant feeling of being hungry. And then that can arouse craving, and the craving for food, and a craving for the sensation of eating. And that matures into clinging, which is when we begin to come into existence in a duality of self and other. The craving, tanha, is a very primitive desire. It's just a movement towards wanting. But then with clinging, it becomes more of a project. It becomes more complicated. So the clinging stage would be beginning to desire specifically pizza, and thinking about where we're going to get the pizza, where maybe we're going to phone out for delivery. And then becoming, the clinging leads to becoming, and then we become into existence in this short cycle as a person eating pizza. The pizza's arrived, and now we're tasting it, so we're coming into existence as a pizza eater. Right? We feel the pleasurable sensation of eating and the allaying of hunger. So that birth and death occur on the momentary scale, just as being born into this condition of eating pizza, and then the pizza's finished, and that's the death of that experience. Okay, next question. After 8th jhana, it seems that one can enter Nirodha Samapatti, emptiness, samadhi, a silence, concentration, etc., and just abide there. What is the difference between all these, and what is their significance? Nirodha Sampatti is a special state, and as I mentioned, is probably commentarial description, but it's said to be only available to the anagami, because it's actually an entry into nibbana. It's abiding in nibbana. So it makes sense that one would have to have previously had a deep experience of nibbana to be able to do that. Emptiness samadhi, from a discourse on emptiness, this would be the formless abidings, particularly the I think probably referring to akinchayatana, the base of nothingness or no thingness, which is not nibbana. It's consciousness that's not particularizing. It's not realizing forms. So it's empty in that sense. Signless concentration, nimitta samadhi. It's similar to that. It's the samadhi that is based on a contemplation of impermanence. One doesn't abide in nimittas, which are stable figures in the mind. What exactly is idle chatter? Will I go to hell because of small talk? No, you're not likely to. You're not likely to go to hell for making small talk. Idle chatters is the Pali is tirachana kata, which is sometimes translated as animal talk, which really makes no sense because animals don't engage in small talk. But the word tirachana more literally means horizontal going. So it's talk that doesn't lead anywhere, that has no atta, no significance or importance. Obviously, in human social interaction, there's always needs to be a certain amount of social lubricant. So small amount of a reasonable amount of small talk is not really idle chatter, but it's and I think we can all recognize this. And when someone just goes on and on and on talking about all kinds of nonsense, it's wearisome to the listener, and it doesn't provide any useful information or any helpful content. No, it's better to remain silent. Sometimes it comes just from nervousness, just to fill the space. Person is not comfortable with silence, so they just natter and chatter, and it's best to curb that. Keep it to a minimum. It is bad karma because you're creating confusion in other people's mind streams. Next one, hypochondria is samvega plus anxiety. If you overcome the anxiety, it becomes daily recollection of being subject to illness and death without being afraid. A couple of weeks ago, I asked a question about individual mind and compared them to branches of a tree, a river, lightning, and so forth, all sharing intrinsic unique patterns. Among them, and seemingly coming from a main source like trunk of a tree, but of course the source itself is a process and it's anatta, just like a tree, and you agree to some extent. Now, when the body dies, is the subsequent branch a direct sub-branch of the preceding one, or it could continue to grow elsewhere in this tree, or maybe in this case the tree simile is irrelevant? Yeah, I think using that tree simile, pushing it too far, may just create confusion. When a being dies, the consciousness arises again according to karma. It's like following a pattern. It's just like within the course of a lifetime, your consciousness is constantly being refreshed according to causes and conditions and according to patterns. It's not totally random. It follows it's not the same from moment to moment, but it has a continuity of being linked by similarity. And all that happens after death is that it can no longer arise associated with the same body. So in the next moment, it finds another condition to arise in based on karma and on these established habit patterns. What is the benefit of sending merit to nagas and devas? Well, traditionally we don't do that. We send merit to beings in the ghost realm. I think you can send loving kindness to nagas and devas. I think that would be more general practice. But on the other hand, there is a chant that we do, sharing merit, that includes beings in all realms. So there is a practice of sending merit to sharing merit with the beings of all realms. The benefit would just be to develop altruism and unselfishness in yourself, and also to have a connection with these higher realms. I have heard somewhere Ajahn Chah describe his stream entry experience, but I don't know the source. Did he ever say what he did to attain stream entry? I'm not real sure. I'm not real sure I recall any explicit statement of his about attaining stream entry. Generally, a monks would be very reticent to do that. It's actually a Vinaya offense to talk about it. Although some Arahant monks like Ajahn Mahabua have openly proclaimed their attainment. I can imagine Ajahn Chah alluding to it and talking about it in a kind of indirect way, but I don't really recall the specific incident. What is a skillful way to approach ill health and sickness? I actually had COVID ATM. I'm not sure what ATM stands for. First time, and felt like I don't have energy to meditate formally, but should I force myself? Yeah, I think of when you're ill, it is more difficult to meditate, but one should attempt to whatever one can do. There was one time when I was in Thailand that I got very ill from food poisoning, and I was really sick. It was very severe, and it lasted for a few days. And I remember lying in my kuti, and I was basically delirious. I was having weird kind of mind states and hallucination kind of states. And in one moment of lucidity, it occurred to me I could easily die from this disease. And I don't want to die in this mind state. Who knows what will happen if I die with my mind so totally be confused and bewildered. So I made an effort from that point to try and have some degree of mindfulness and clarity. I wouldn't say that I was able to have a really good meditation, but I just refused to abandon myself to that that confusion, and I tried to just hold a thread of conscious awareness. So I think it's important when you're sick to try and do that, and bring up that reflection. What happens if I die in this mind state? How can we save our loved ones in the hell realms and prevent them from entering it either before or after they die? Well, you can't really do anything for someone who's already in the hell realm. If you can help a being, if you can see a loved one or another being performing actions that seem demonic and leading one towards a lower existence, if it's possible to point out to them the danger that they're in, they may not be possible. They may not want to listen. But that's all you can do is while they're still alive is to try and convince them to change their ways, which may not be easy, may not even be possible. But once they're in hell, they're there till their karma runs out. There's nothing you can do. Does the fact that we can experience bodily or mentally pain fade away as we distill the activity of the sense doors, mean that these sensations and feelings we attribute to them are ultimately mind-made feelings, empty and ultimately not real, form based on distorted perception, along with anusaya, gati, and tanha, that all sensory inputs are inherently neutral, or adukkha, amsukha, vedana, does this mean upeka is deliberate cultivation of adukkha, amsukha, vedana through abandoning tanha? If I understand you rightly, I don't think that's correct. I think that all sensations are not inherently neutral. They are they're karma resultant, meaning we don't have a control of them now. They're coming from past causes, and they are pleasant or unpleasant. But then our reaction to them is what is important. How do we deal with that? And it's important to not let it develop into craving. So when there's, say, unpleasant sensation, to recognize in the mind this is unpleasant sensation, and the physical sensation is still unpleasant, but we don't have to succumb to a mental anguish on top of that, and we should try and avoid as much as possible the craving, oh, may this suffering end, but just recognize it as a sensation, and this is an unpleasant sensation, and realize it. Next one, Ajahn, are you familiar with Kisatagarbha Bodhisattva in Mahayana associated with freeing others from hell? Yeah, I've heard of that, and there's not really an equivalent of that in Theravada, except there is one commentarial story about Moggallana, who at one time manifested himself in a hell realm and created a bubble of coolness around himself, and beings were attracted to it to escape from the hellfires, and he preached the Dhamma to them. Now, this is a commentarial story. I've found a few stories in the commentaries that are kind of Mahayana in flavor, and the commentaries were put down by Buddhaghosa at a time when there was a lot of Mahayana influence in Sri Lanka. The other monastery, Abhayagiri, was very much influenced with Mahayana. So those ideas were in the air, they were in the milieu. But in the original canon, in the older Buddhist teaching, there's no real hope of getting out of hell except for letting the karma run out. In Anguttara 11:12, it said, "One who is virtuous will naturally have no regrets, and this lead naturally to joy and tranquility, and eventually jhana. Does not having any regrets lead to joy, and eventually jhana? Doesn't seem to happen for me." Well, it does have that effect, but I think it's not, let's say it's not sufficient. I mean, you have to make the effort to develop the mind. You have to practice meditation, but if you're full of regrets, it's impossible to really develop samadhi, which is one of the main reasons to keep good morality, keep good sila, so you don't create regrets. But then if we have regrets in our past, we have to learn to let them go. What is a more wise way to deal with prolonged physical pain in the body? I think there's using meditation. There are two approaches that are different from one another. There's a samatha approach and a vipassana approach. Samatha approach would be to develop samadhi to such a deep degree that one dissociates sensation from the body. This was actually practiced by the Buddha in his last days. He said the only time he was free of pain was when he was sitting in fourth jhana. And it is possible to lessen and eventually eliminate physical pain by developing a deep samadhi. The other approach, the vipassana approach, is perhaps more challenging, is to take the pain itself as an object of contemplation. So one's not escaping from the pain, but looking at it and trying to see it as an object of consciousness. So it's externalizing the pain to that extent, but it's not eliminating it. Just seeing this as an object that doesn't affect consciousness itself. The chitta observes the pain, but it's not in pain itself. And if you can make that subject-object distinction, then you're practicing vipassana. Okay. Next one. Envisioning biological organisms and their evolution as a tree seems to be the closest model we have to understand their behavior. Yeah, I would agree with that a tree model for seeing organic life as a whole is a decent one. They get more versatile as they travel further. They still carry many shared innate properties, even more so in close branches like leopards and cats, humans and chimps. Does mind not follow this behavior? Yeah, well, to the degree that our minds are part of a long evolution that you could also this is maybe not really what you're getting at, but I think you could also say this apply it to sankharas, that I think it was Richard Dawkins who came up with the concept of memes, which is now being used in a kind of different way in terms of internet culture. But his idea of memes was a mental parallel to genes. A meme is basically an idea or an idea cluster that is passed from person to person and has its own kind of evolutionary history that can modify with change and have mutations. And then is the memes that are successful are the ones that propagate themselves, that many people pick them up. And I would say this is like sankharas, and that we could see in the intellectual history of the human race that certain sankharas get passed from generation to generation and proliferate and develop into different forms and variations. And you could probably put them in a tree form. I've seen people try to do that with things like the history of religions, different branches of religions gradually proliferating out from the original stock. Okay, next, people sometimes think something is wrong with you, trying to get rid of defilements. It's like the worse you act, the more people like it. And being a goody-goody comes off wrong to people. How do you deal with I don't see the second half of that. I don't like the way this chat breaks up the comments like that. But I think I know. I think that's enough. If you, it's partly who are you associating with? If you're associating with people that are full of defilements themselves, then of course you're not going to appreciate virtue. But there's also a degree to which you can be virtuous without becoming without making a show of it. Just keep your own sila, but don't come across as proclaiming that you're better than other people. Is there a waiting period between death and next life? That's a question without a definitive answer. Of course, in the Tibetan tradition, there is a whole developed doctrine about the Bardo states and what happens between death and birth. In the Theravada Abhidhamma, the interpretation is that there is no intermediate state. There is a person dies and the death consciousness is followed immediately by rebirth consciousness. In the case of a human birth, it would be conception in a womb. Although that's the strict orthodox Theravada position, according to the commentaries in the Abhidhamma, many people have pointed out that there are some passages in the canon that seem to contradict this and talks about an antara bhava, the intermediate state. And it's certainly in Buddhist countries, in Theravada Buddhist countries, the general belief is that you spend some time as a ghost. This is the Thai version anyway, that almost everyone, except someone who's very well developed, very spiritual, almost everyone will come back as a ghost for a period of time before taking a proper birth. So the bottom line is there's no really definitive answer, but it does. I think the general feeling is that there is some kind of intermediate state. It's not necessarily as the Abhidhamma says. In the Abhidharma Kosha, which is Sarvastivadin book, talks about the Gandhabba, which in the Pali, the Gandhabba is not defined. This is another source of a lot of controversy and speculation. But it said when a human being is born, the three things come together: the seed of the father, the blood of the mother, and the Gandhabba seeking rebirth. And it's never defined or explained. But in the Sarvastivada, the Gandhabba is described as a little spirit that flits around and lives off of flowers and scents. Because the word Gandhabba the Gandha means scent or smell, sense of smell. So they live by their sense of smell. And they're attracted by eventually to their parents in the act of copulation, and they enter into the act as a third party and take birth there. How many aggregates do beings of formless realms have? They have 4. Did the Buddha ever communicate with them? There's no record of that. There's no never come across any incident of the Buddha communicating with beings in the formless realm. When talked about samsara, is often described as without beginning, without end. But is it possible for an individual mind to put an end to it? How does the ending of samsara, even on individual level, isn't in conflict with the laws of causality? How can something without beginning come to an end after parinirvana? Well, time itself is something that exists within as a product of samsara. And when a being enters parinirvana, they leave the cycles of time. They're not involved with that anymore, so it doesn't really apply. Okay, getting to the end here. I'll take one more, I think. Did the Buddha say most of us will go to hell regardless of what we do? No, he didn't say that. But maybe striving for stream entry in Sotapanna could be a minimum. Yet, well, striving for stream entry is your only secure, sure guarantee that you're not going to be reborn in hell. So that alone makes it worthwhile to do that. Okay, so I think I'll take my leave, and we'll be back again next week at the same time. Okay, bye all.